Good evening, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Come join us for this Q&A. My name is Anthony Kaufman. I'm a senior programmer at the Chicago International Film Festival. We're very excited to be having this Q&A with director Kris Rey of the film I Used to Go Here. It is a film that we would have liked to show at the Chicago International Film Festival, but it's open. It's now playing at the Music Box Theater. And I'd like to thank them for partnering with us on the Q&A. And if you haven't seen the film yet, you should go see it. It's still playing in their virtual cinema. Now, please welcome director Kris Rey.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kris, for coming.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yay.
So, Kris, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I am focusing purely on my movie being released and trying to ignore everything else that's going on in the world for just a second.
That's cool.
So I'm doing okay.
It is a great, little over 90 minutes escape from the current troubles. And it's a funny film. People, I think, are really enjoying it. I think people of a certain age are feeling very resonant with the story. Why don't you give us a little background? I've heard that there's some similarities with your experience, just in terms of, you know that place, right?
I do. I know Carbondale really well. As well as anybody does. I spent 4 years going to school there. So yeah, I went to Southern Illinois University, class of 2003. I went to film school there, and then the experience is the film is inspired by an experience I had after my last feature, Unexpected, came out. Or rather, before it came out, like there's this bubble between it premiering at Sundance and the movie being released in theaters, where I got invited to a bunch of universities, and it was my first time as an adult being invited back to colleges to talk and show my work. One of the ones I got invited back to was Southern. So I went to my alma mater. And but in all these places, it was like a similar story where like I showed the film, I talked to film students, and sort of, hung out a little bit with the professors, but like really wanted to hang out with the kids because I wanted to be cool. And they really wanted to hang out with me. And, there were a couple of times where I went out and got beers with them. And it was cool. And it also was weird because I had sort of felt, I think taking my movie to Sundance, and people talk about this a lot, it's like post Sundance blues, where you're like, you think it's going to catapult you into like some kind of like stardom. And, sometimes it does that, but mostly you sort of go back home and are like, okay, so now I have to start another screenplay and start the process all over again. And I went back to these colleges where these kids in their 20s, were looking at me like I was incredibly successful and have made it. And to see myself through that lens was really nice. And I sort of imagined that depending on how you were doing in your life at the time, that a feeling like that could be intoxicating. And that is what inspired the movie.
So like, having seen the film, it's hard to see it with a different actress, right? I feel like Gillian Jacobs seems to capture that quite well. Maybe she's the right age too. I don't know if you guys are similar in age, but was having her in the part, like, did it make it sort of come alive more than maybe what you were expecting? I'm curious about that. When you saw her in the role, how did that change things for you?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it happens almost every time that I cast anyone in any role. With Gillian, it's this thing that sort of happens in tandem, where I haven't yet like written a character for an actor, imagining a certain actor play that part. But once I cast someone, then I go back through the script. And Gillian really like felt like she was Kate to me. So there wasn't that much of an adjustment, but for sure, once I cast Jemaine Clement as David, I went back through and I was like reading every line of dialogue in Jemaine's voice, and it was it meant that I changed a bit about like what he was saying and what that character did. And one of the examples would be like him pouring tea for everyone. That was a scene, him like giving everyone like their little individual cups of tea after they break into his house. That was a scene that I wrote already knowing that Jemaine had signed on to play the role. And so, yeah, it works. So I wrote that scene for Jemaine, and then Jemaine played it, and then he changed it a little bit more. So like then he adjusted it, and it is this like sort of beautiful dance between like the script and the cast.
The specifics of the you know, it's a world that you've created. I mean, it's a small town Illinois world. It exists, and yet I feel like the script and the film itself really captures like the details of this life. I mean, just this little tea example is pretty hilarious. But there's a lot of I'm wondering, like, again, really, how much was originally in the script, how much was like in your head, like, I know that I want to capture this sign because I feel like it, captures the feeling of this town.
Yeah. Well, what I've been learning to do as a screenwriter is put anything that's in my head, I have to put it in the script, because I think what I didn't realize before I made Unexpected, which was my first scripted feature, was that it's not just kind of like, it's not just for you. I mean, this is so obvious, but it's like the props person, the costume designer, the production designer, the DP, the gaffer, like literally like every person in the crew gets this blueprint. And so if you want her to be drinking out of a coffee mug that is red, you have to write red coffee mug. And if you do, which I've had this happen to me before, where I've been like, and, I write a little detail, like she's talking on the phone while she folds laundry or something. And then they'll bring me a bunch of laundry and say, what do you think about this laundry? Should we do this laundry or this laundry? And by that point, sometimes I'll be like, oh, I actually don't really, the laundry was just something I don't really need to do the laundry, but you have to be really sure when you're writing a script that if you are imagining, something I forget to do a lot that I always like in movies, and when there's a lot of transitional shots, like between one scene and another, you see, a really beautifully framed, like a telephone wire with like some birds landing on it, for instance, would be like a transitional shot. And if you don't write it in there, then no one is blocking off the time to go and get those shots. And then ultimately, you're so overwhelmed with all of the other details that go into making a movie that you forget to do it. And so I'm trying to get better as a filmmaker at knowing what I want, like really knowing what I want, like the characters be holding, like what the location looks like, and writing that in the script. Some of that, of course, a lot of it comes from the collaboration with the other artistic people on the team. But if you have an idea ahead of time, you gotta write it down. Right.
Is it, so, I mean, the other thing that strikes me about the film in terms of detail is also the characters. Like every character is great. Every character is kind of, and every, your supporting cast, all, from the who runs the B&B, like just so like, I guess maybe the question is like, how, when you're writing, do you make these characters alive and funny and unique? And or how much of that is happening on the set, once you've cast someone, like that actress who plays, for instance, the woman who runs the B&B, who's like, I mean, it's great. And that whole rhythm that they have throughout the film is like, it like creates this, escalating dynamic that's very fun.
Yeah, the woman who plays the B&B owner is an actress named Cindy Gold, who's a local actress who also is a professor at Northwestern University in theater. She's like so good. And I cast her because I did a table reading for SAG here in Chicago last February, and cast local actors for all of those roles. And Cindy was someone that was cast for that, as well as Ramel Chan, who plays Elliot. Both of them are local actors, and they're both incredible. And really, like, you know, for her specifically and Ramel, all I gave those people was the script. I mean, all for the table read, all they have is the script, and they brought so much of themselves to it, and made that character. And then once I saw that, I was like, that's what I want. I want that person. And I also try and put enough in the script that, like, you know, really describes, I think, like, you know, for instance, like Mrs. Beater is her name, the woman that runs the bed and breakfast. At the very last scene of the movie, when she gives Kate breakfast, I think in the script I wrote something like, Kate, you know, I wrote like, Kate, no, I was just looking for breakfast. And then I wrote something like, Mrs. Beater, like, drops her shoulders and gives in, this is all she ever wanted all along. Mm-hmm. So, like, writing description in there like that tells the actor not just what they're supposed to be doing in the moment, but really, like, what the hell was going on with her the whole movie.
Right. But you took the time when you were writing to give this secondary character, like, this whole big life and motivation and need and want, you know, which
yes, but that happened like through a total, like, long process. Like the first draft I didn't know what was going on with her. I just knew that she was an obstacle.
Right.
So it took it took me, like, really sitting down and thinking about that character specifically. And then, you know, just to, like, keep talking about that character, because I think it is really interesting, because she is a small character, but she does feel very full. And she has, even though she's almost like an isolated character, she almost only deals with Kate, but she's just like almost every character in the movie. She's like throughout, you know, she's bookended. And the other thing was the wardrobe. Like, my costume designer, Kate Grube, we sat and talked for a long time, like, what kind of clothes does this woman wear? And that process helped me discover who she was. And finally, we were like, I don't know. We were looking at different, like, websites for, like, that older women tend to buy clothes for. And we were like, what does she wear? And then all of a sudden it occurred to me, she's like Ina Garten. It's like, she's wearing clothes that Ina Garten wears. And then we, like, go on Ina Garten's, like, Instagram, and we're like, okay, yes, this is the kind of stuff she's wearing. And it helped, like, fill in who that person was.
Cool. So we'll be taking questions from the audience in a second. I have another question or two, and then just type in your questions, and I'll get them off to Kris. One other thing I was just wondering about, and just in terms of the story of the film, like, it goes to, like, sort of hijinks, like,
yeah,
you know, it's this sort of, you know, not romantic drama, but, you know, it's like a character portrait, right? And then it kind of goes loony, and Tall Brandon, you know, like, makes it with the mom, and so, like, I'm wondering if you can kind of explain, maybe, I don't know about explain, but, like, what were you kind of?
It wasn't something that I was like, I'm going to write a movie and it's going to go here. While I was writing the outline, it just felt like it wanted to go there to me. And an early draft, I sent an early draft of the movie to a friend and mentor of mine called Larry Kierzewski. He has written, like, a million amazing things. He also wrote like People versus O.J. Simpson and People versus Larry Flint. This is the first time it's occurring to me that he's written like People versus. He's like incredible, and he's like done a million things, and he's great. I sent him an early draft. He liked it. He told me that it needed to happen, that the transition from the sort of like first part of the movie to them breaking into the professor's house, he encouraged me to add in some, he called them baby steps. And it was great advice for me. And I definitely took it. And it was good. You know, even though I went to film school, I didn't go to I love my film school so much, but it's not one of the best. and you know, it's not one of the best, right? And it focused mainly on documentary and experimental film. And I don't think I ever took a screenwriting class. And so I've taught myself, you know, basically. And Larry, you know, telling me about these baby steps, like, I think I had like in that early draft, like just like a cut to like them like breaking the house or something. And he was like, I think I had someone just say like, let's break into his house. And then they went, and he was like, maybe they don't say let's break in. Maybe they say like, let's just go check it out. Mm-hmm. And that advice was so good, because it is what happens in real life. Like one little thing leads to another thing. Like, and so I mean, yes, there is a hijinks, but hopefully there's enough of those baby steps in it that doesn't feel like super jarring in the film.
Okay. I have one quick question, and then we'll take audience questions.
Yeah.
I would like to know about your writing process for the poem, for the Hannah Marks character's poem in the story.
Terrible. That was terrible.
Were you like, I'm gonna set out to make a terrible poem? Here we go.
No. The process was terrible.
Oh.
I didn't have anything in the script. It said I don't think there was ever a poem in the script. Up until we were shooting, it said, and then, you know, it was just like, and then she reads something that's like vulnerable and like bold and like even sexual and like really, really good. Okay. It said that in the script. And I had no idea how to write that poem. I knew how to write something bad because I wrote the excerpts from Kate's book. So I knew how to write something bad. I had no idea how to write something good. So I had help from some people that helped me pull that poem together. But it wasn't me.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I thought I might get you on that one. All right, so we got some questions from the audience, a bunch. So why don't I read a few out? So, you know, you were telling the story about how you were inspired. Was there a reason why you didn't make the character a filmmaker like yourself, you know, versus an author? Authors aren't exactly cinematic.
Authors are not. I just thought, wouldn't it be so lame to make it about a filmmaker? That was like honestly mostly why. I just thought this would be so lame if I made her a filmmaker.
Just lame.
And then there's also something about like a film, which is like,
you want to create some distance, right?
Say it again.
You want to create some distance in a way.
Yes, I didn't want to make this character just a substitute for me, and she's really not. You know, she's really not. Although there are certainly a lot of aspects that are the same, and a lot of things that she's struggling with are things that I struggle with. But it's not a movie about me. And it did feel like if I made that character a filmmaker, it would feel a bit like a movie about the director, which I didn't want. And then there's also something about being a novelist. It's different. You know, as I was just describing with the film, there's so many different people weighing in and contributing to a final product, whereas like, that is true. You know, you're a novelist, you have an editor, but you have a publisher, but it's really you writing it. And the success and failure, the reaction to that is really a reaction to like your work. And I just thought that it just felt a little cleaner.
Right.
Yeah.
So a question about like your writing process. You know, you were talking about drafts, you know, and going back and like what was the first draft different from later drafts. So, you know, the question about like adding in that background, that, you know, that character trait with the breakfast scene. You know, what's your process for that? What kind of method do you do in terms of you know, rewriting and rewriting? How many drafts, you know, did this go through?
I mean, I couldn't even tell you. It like probably like 15 or something, like really a lot. And then toward the end, you're just making like a few little changes, and then that's like a new draft. But where this movie started from where it winded up is like such a different place. Here is what okay. And the other thing I'll say, every single time I start a new script, I am like, how the hell do you write a script? It is so overwhelming. I can't believe I wrote this whole movie. Even like really, like even talking to you right now, I'm like really thinking about all those things. I'm like, how did I do that? I wrote that whole thing. I made up all these characters I don't even remember. And I'm doing it right now. I'm in the middle of, or not in the middle, in the very beginnings of writing a new movie. I'm writing I have a co-writer, so this, which is easier, so far much easier. And I wrote Unexpected with somebody else too, and that it's easier and way more fun to write with somebody else. So my process is typically my process is I do a basic outline like on a Word document, and then I take those little scenes and I note card them. And this is what I learned from Larry Karaszewski when I first said, like, how do you write a screenplay? He was just like, you got to use index cards. And I really didn't know anything about this. It's just like standard. Most people kind of work this way, or a lot of people work this way. But then I take all the scenes and I write the headings on like an index card. I lay them out and in the order that I think they're going to go in, and then I sort of rearrange them. And then I go back in and I figure out like really what are those scenes going to be. And then once I think it's like in good shape, then I'll start tackling one scene at a time, really scripting it out.
And what about like draft 10?
God, draft 10.
I mean, I guess, you know, I think to the person's question, like, what are you looking for when you draft after draft, right? You talked about
right.
Well, like, what happens later? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So first draft, I'll read it and I'll go like, I'll probably go, I don't know if this is good or not. And then I just send it to people. So I have all of these friends. Luckily, I have like so many friends in the industry that are my peers that I'm like, please will you read first draft? And people do that for each other. I just read a first draft of a filmmaker friend of mine last week, and was like, she was like, I don't know if this is good or not. And I was like, it is good. Here's what I think could make it better. Here's parts I think you don't need. What if this happened? What if this happened? And then usually what happens if someone gives you a no, and usually in the beginning, hopefully it's a big no. When you attack that no, it pulls a thread, and then you have to go back in and kind of like figure out like, what else did that mess up? What happens if I take this scene out? It affects the scene after it, affects the scene before it, like. And then you're just kind of like readjusting it. Then you send it to another person and you get their feedback. And then you send it to 3 other people, and you just keep going. And then for this, I was also looking for financing. So one of the big things that I had to do was cut my script down. So I had like in the screenplay that I was ready to shoot, that I was like, this is finished, this is ready to go. That screenplay was 110 pages. And then because of budget level, every page is a minute of the movie, and every minute of the movie is like, however, maybe you're going to do like when you're in production, maybe you're going to try and get like 6 pages done a day of the script. So 6 pages is a whole day, and a whole day costs however much. You got to pay everybody for that day of work, which is a lot. You got to pay for insurance, you got to pay for the gear, all this stuff. So for budget reasons, I had to cut my 110-page script down to a 90-page script. And that's what we ended up shooting. So, there's that was like a big draft change, and there were so many threads that were pulled. So I had to go back in and adjust a bunch of stuff. Yes.
Okay. Question, could you talk a little bit about what it was like filming in Carbondale? I used to go there, says one of the...
Oh, yes. Cool. SAU. I love Carbondale, obviously. I did not shoot the movie in Carbondale. I wanted to shoot the movie in Carbondale, but it was cost prohibitive to do so, and logistically very difficult because there's not enough crew that lives down in Carbondale, and there's not enough gear, and there's not an international airport very close by. So we really explored it. I went, and I was pretty adamant that we were going to shoot the whole damn movie there. And we went on a scouting trip. We checked out, we looked at the dorms, we looked at staying in the towers, the whole crew staying in the towers. But it didn't really make sense on paper to do it. And to be totally honest with you, Carbondale itself has changed a lot since I was at school there, and it's really emptied out, and it's not the same town that I really wrote the movie for. So even if we had shot in Carbondale, what I learned was like I was going to have to change a lot about like what Carbondale was, even in Carbondale, in order to make it this sort of like quaint, like small college town that I remembered. And so we ended up shooting in Chicago, and we shot the writer's retreat and the bed and breakfast. We shot in Austin, at the neighborhood Austin near Oak Park, and the lake stuff we shot at this place called Camp Wandawega, which is like this magical place in Wisconsin. And we just found locations that would make it look like a small town, and I think it's pretty convincing.
One quick question: why did you name that character Bradley Cooper?
I named the character Bradley Cooper because when I was writing the script, I always get stuck on names where I'm like flowing and I'm like details are coming out, dialogue is being written, and then I'm like, oh, what's this guy's name? And I knew that I wanted that character's name to be one of those people that everyone has a person like this in their life, which is a person that everyone calls by their first and last name no matter what. And I have plenty of friends that I call whatever their first and last name is. And I knew I wanted this guy to have a name like that, but I couldn't think of any name besides Bradley Cooper.
Okay.
And so I was just like Bradley Cooper, and I was like, come on, what other name? And it was just like Bradley Cooper. And so I was like, I wonder if Bradley Cooper, it is like it's very common, 2 really common names. Sure. And I was like, hell, I'm sure there's a million Bradley Coopers out there. And so, yes, I named the character Bradley Cooper.
Right.
Yeah.
Another question. Can you discuss why it was important for you to feature Chicago and Illinois-based artists and musicians in the film?
Well, represent. I'm like always trying to represent. And I love Chicago so much. And I'm just like always trying to make work here. I'm always trying to get people to stay here and not move to LA. I think it's just like a very, very like cool place to live, and I like love the city. And then the music scene is awesome, and I learned a lot about my brother-in-law James Swanberg is a musician here, and he was very helpful, like hooking me up with some local bands and introducing me some music. I also had a guy named Ryan Deffitt help me, and there's like a lot of I just like ended up getting connected with a bunch of local bands, and wanted to feature as much local music as it can, and it's great. It's one of my favorite things about the movie.
Okay, great. There was a question earlier on. It's kind of a bigger question, less about the film, more about you in terms of like what inspired you to be a director in the first place.
That is a big question. That is kind of a standard question, and I should have a really easy answer for it. I don't know. I like telling stories, like in real life. I like telling stories. I like telling funny stories about like awkward situations I've been in. I like hearing stories. I like stories, and I like exploring the shit I'm grappling with. And this was definitely tackling subjects that I am grappling with personally, and I am finding that like as a filmmaker, writing a movie, making a movie helps me sort of just personally like go through what's going on with me in my life.
Sure, I think that's pretty common.
Yeah.
So I think this is the last question. Going back to your writing, I mean, I do think what makes the film great is the characters. And someone asks, you know, how do you create characters, such good characters? What tips do you have? Like,
I don't know. I guess I'm just thinking about. Often I'm thinking about people that I've encountered and people that I've seen and know. Tall Brandon is an example of a character that I wrote because Brandon Daly is like a real guy that was kind of I wasn't close enough to like consider a friend, but he was like in my like social circle, kind of like on the periphery. And I just thought he was kind of like a funny character. And I wrote a character called Tall Brandon. And then he found out that I was writing a character in a movie based on him. And he asked me if he could play the character. And I was like, I don't know. And then I made him audition for it. And then he was like, absolutely steals the entire movie. He's so good in it. But, you know, yeah, I mean, that was like, definitely a direct example of someone that or a way that I like formed a character. I don't, you know, someone like the Mrs. Peter, the person that owns a bed and breakfast. I just made her up, and same with like Elliot. But it's all based on characters that I've come across or like the idea of a person that I've come across. Yeah.
Okay. So very good. I think that's it. Thank you so much, Kris Rey. Everyone, if you haven't seen the movie yet, I'm sure most of you have, but if you haven't, tell your friends. I used to go here, still playing at the Music Box Theater's virtual cinema.
And in real life cinema.
And in real life cinemas, where?
Yeah. At the Music Box.
Oh, at the Music Box. You can see it at the Music Box.
You can. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Not just virtual. Is it playing in theaters around the country? Any theaters around the country?
Yeah, it is. It's playing in theaters that are open, and it's playing at a bunch of drive-ins too.
That's great.
Yeah.
So yeah, tell your friends all over. Where can people go to see where it's playing?
That's a really good question.
Gravitas Ventures has a
Gravitas, maybe.
Yeah, I would hope so.
I would hope they would.
Kris, you need to be on this.
I gotta be on it.
You gotta have your website.
I gotta do it.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thanks so much.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you so much. Okay.